Read a second time. I call the Parliamentary Secretary and Member for Cootamundra.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak to the Greyhound Racing Prohibition Bill 2016, and in doing so I recognise that the overview of the bill, the object is to close the greyhound racing industry in New South Wales on the 1st of July 2017. And for that purpose, the bill authorises the Minister to appoint a Greyhound Racing Administrator to wind up greyhound racing in New South Wales, the affairs of Greyhound Racing New South Wales, enables greyhound racing to continue until the greyhound racing closure date, and makes provision for the welfare of greyhounds affected by the closure of greyhound racing, and provides for the repeal of the Greyhound Racing Act 2009, the dissolution of Greyhound Racing New South Wales, and a proclaimed date after the greyhound racing closure date. Mr Speaker, I've been in politics for 17 years and I've been involved with my party for 22 years. Mr Speaker, I oppose the ban on greyhound racing. Mr Speaker, I've not made this move in any other way except with a terribly heavy heart and considerable emotional torment. I'm furious that it's come to this when so many alternatives exist. Mr Speaker, I've only ever shown true loyalty to my party. The decision to ban an industry is wrong because of the process that took us to it, the precedent it will set, but most importantly, the people it will hurt. Mr Speaker, the first recommendation in Justice McHugh's report into the greyhound racing industry in New South Wales talks about the Parliament considering whether the industry has lost its social licence and should not be allowed to continue in New South Wales. Recommendations 2 to 80 map out a way forward for the industry. Some of the recommendations, such as the establishment of a Greyhound Racing Integrity Commission, removing exemptions within the rules of racing, and new codes of conduct, are sensible and should be welcomed. At the end of the day, Mr McHugh's report provides more alternatives than this vote does. But all the same, Justice McHugh's report is a report to government, not from government. We are not bound to it as if it were the Holy Bible, the Torah or the Quran. We are supposed to deliberate through the prism of the people that we serve. Mr Speaker, the precedence that this vote will bring is both odorous and onerous. I'm in a party because the collective of geography and experience tempers my view by understanding the subtleties or insights of others. There are times of terrorism or siege where I accept the primacy of the executive to act deliberately and immediately, but a decision on greyhounds does not fall into this category. When a process is announced, all said and done, a proclamation for us to sell to a bewildered electorate without the proper avenues for my rebuttal on their behalf, then the party approach has been usurped. Mr Speaker, the Nationals have traditionally prided ourselves as the bulwark that tempers those sectors that may not have grown up with the land and animals. Our federal Nationals colleagues fought against the closure of the live cattle trade. Why? Because of the belief that the effects on the people it hurt were excessive. We have a political role to be the counterbalance to excessive green politics, yet this decision on dogs has us voting with them against our people. Mr Speaker, the Nationals represent the poorest electorates, and greyhound racing is the sport of the battlers. I consider the job on our side is to stay out of people's lives as much as possible and manage problems, not shut down industries. Only chooks that lay eggs are kept, the rest become wastage. Slow horses become dog food. Bad genetics in all industries are culled. An early lesson for those who grow up on the land is that you don't put human qualities onto animals. The belief that animals are people, an anthropomorphic elevation of all sentient beings to be human, would quite simply mean the end of agriculture. It would have to, because if a dog has the same rights as a human, then I cannot tie him up. Mr Speaker, I grew up on the land and I truly hope that I am not callous. But I am by necessity realistic that we live by the use of animals, at times against their wishes. All who eat meat, use a leather briefcase or wear sheepskin boots by default agree. I've been contacted by many people in relation to this bill, yet I have not had one grassroots National Party member from my electorate tell me that banning the greyhound industry in New South Wales is a good idea. Just the opposite has occurred. Mr Speaker, it's never been our policy to abolish greyhound racing. It's not our policy to abolish any industry. As the Deputy Prime Minister said, when you start abolishing entire industries, you end up hurting people that you never meant to. Mr Speaker, greyhound racing is popular. The Goulburn Greyhound Racing Club has 2,500 associate members, and whilst that figure would also include harness racing and thoroughbred racing enthusiasts, the public sympathy underlying the greyhound racing industry is huge. Mr Speaker, this legislation will undoubtedly be used as a precedent to abolish other existing industries. It may be the harness racing or thoroughbred industries that are next on the hit list. Perhaps it will be dairy farming or pig farming or layer hen production. Maybe it will be other dog breeding activities, who knows? I've heard the ministers responsible say that they won't allow it to happen to other industries. But the funny thing about positions in government is that they tend to come and go. We know who the ministers are today, but we don't know who will be the next to occupy those seats. And if they don't have a rural background, quite frankly, any one of these industries could easily be next. Several of those just listed also have wastage issues. Mr Speaker, this decision will set a precedent. After this ban goes through, rodeos, pig shooting, intensive barn agriculture such as egg production, dairy and pigs will all know the excesses of government are one step closer to their recreational pursuits or their businesses. To say otherwise is naive and ignores the historical political process about which we are supposed to be expert. You cannot create an edict that this decision on dogs sits in splendid historical political isolation. Mr Speaker, rural health is a significant concern in regional New South Wales. The Riverina has very high obesity rates and heart disease is out of control. Just last week, the Heart Foundation issued a report that showed that more than 81% of people living in the Riverina undertook no exercise. Mr Speaker, walking the dog is a great way to reduce stress and weight worries. Every morning in Cowra, Young and Temora and in other towns across central and southern New South Wales, you will see people out walking their greyhounds, trying to keep their dogs looking their best and unwittingly also contributing to their own good health. Through racing, the dogs pay for their keep, and they also keep the physical and mental health of their owner in check. Mental health is a big killer in the regions. According to the ABS in 2013, more than a quarter of all deaths in Australia were the result of suicide. Mr Speaker, I request an extension of time.
Extension of time has been requested.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. That is, out of 9,136 deaths, 2,522 were from suicide. For many people in my electorate of Cootamundra, owning a couple of greyhound dogs is the norm. These dogs are their life. They groom them, exercise them, provide them with special diets, and these people are good people. They are the people that you run into in the news agency in the early morning to pick up the paper. Many of these people are blue-collar workers, doing their best to provide for themselves and or their families. Many have tight budgets, and having a dog is a way of earning a little extra money, and certainly a great source of pride on race day. Pride leads to self-esteem, and positive self-esteem leads to better health outcomes. Mr Speaker, people are angry, depressed and hurt about the decision to close the greyhound industry. When people have something involuntarily taken from them, when it's their passion and the reason for getting out of bed in the morning, it is natural for them to get upset or depressed or both and wonder what's the point of it all. In my electorate, I have greyhound racetracks in Cowra, Temora and Young. There are larger tracks and meets in the cities surrounding the Cootamundra electorate. Locally, clubs use race days as an opportunity to raise money for important charities. One example is the Temora Greyhound Race Club, which has raised $50,000 for Can Assist, a marvellous charity that helps support local cancer sufferers and their families. Mr Speaker, these people are not criminals, and they deeply resent the way in which the advertising campaign that is being funded by the government implies that they are being cruel to their beloved animals. Mr Speaker, I cannot support a decision which will result in the loss of thousands of full-time and part-time jobs in New South Wales and many more indirect jobs for no net benefit. Mr Speaker, I never want to vote with Labor. I don't support Labor in any way, shape or form. Labor did its best during 16 long years of government in New South Wales to show its disdain for country people with policies such as abolishing the river red gum industry, their lack of support for country towns during the Millennium Drought, their destructive approach to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, and their ever-increasing imposts on small business and increased taxes more broadly. Mr Speaker, the New South Wales Liberals and Nationals, in its first term of government, brought about such profound change in New South Wales. We restored business confidence almost instantly. We inherited from Labor an economy that was the worst in the nation, but the New South Wales Liberals and Nationals brought New South Wales back to the top, complete with a AAA credit rating. This is truly a great government, and I'm proud to have played a role in streamlining an overinflated bureaucracy, decentralising government departments, and reducing red tape by updating legislation and eliminating taxes. Whilst I totally disagree with this legislation, and I have made that clear very publicly from the start, I do want to thank the Deputy Premier for providing our party room with a lengthy meeting on the resumption of Parliament, during which time every National Party MP and MLC had the opportunity to put their views forward at length, undiluted and as robustly as he or she wished. Indeed, as we had the opportunity to do so tonight. The Deputy Premier has his own very strong convictions in relation to this issue. I respect that. I too have very strong convictions on this ban, and he has shown respect to me for those views. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I've been threatened for expressing my views by some who have served in this place for periods far less than me. So be it. And after 17 years, I will happily stand by my reasoning. But to serve in Parliament, you must have some guiding principles that are innate and not instructed. If the process was different, I am certain so too would the outcome have been, an outcome based on a more methodical and logical process to a complex but not impossible issue. In this state Parliament, we have and will continue to deal with issues more exceptional than this. But if those who rely on us to find a calmer process of a more diligent resolution are ignored, then this vote to ban an industry must be defeated. Mr. Speaker, I take this very tough decision today, not to vote with Labor, but I have to oppose this legislation on behalf of my electorate, on behalf of those who are sick and depressed by this proposed ban and who feel that they have no voice, and on behalf of those many people who are involved in agriculture in my electorate who will be targeted based on the precedent being set today.
Speaker.